Hey folks, John Cantera, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter here. Welcome to another episode of Stop the Scam. And today we are going to be talking a bit more about carrier compliance. For those of you who don't already know, we have been dealing for the last 6 months now with DOT not allowing people to go and get voluntary inspections at scale houses. So there are quite a few carriers out there who are showing no inspections because they just haven't been hit in the last 2 years. So the question at hand for the panel today is, what do we need to do to make sure that good carriers are actually the ones who are getting these loads? Because those brokers out there who require inspections within 6 months or so are going to start getting only carriers that are observed doing unsafe actions, because that's about the only way you're going to get pulled over. With that being said, let's go ahead and get this show started. And we are also very excited that we have our first sponsor. So we'll get through the intro, then we'll do some sponsor love, and then we'll get to our panel.
Welcome to the Double Broker Bounty Hunters Stop the Scam. Here are your hosts, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter, John Cantera, and Dispatch Kate, Caitlin Price.
Another one bites the dust.
It's another Monday, another Stop the Scam, and we are definitely happy to be here. Hope everyone enjoyed their holiday weekend. And for those of you who follow me on LinkedIn, you know that we were still working through the weekend because, let's face it, the scammers don't take holidays. So with that being said, Kate, how was your Monday?
It was all right. It wasn't too bad. It was very lax. So we'll see. I did have somebody. Funny story. Let's start off with a funny story. I went to book a load this morning, and it was with Pinnacle Pro, and who's normally a very good broker, right? So I called, and I was clearly talking to a new lady. Like, the person that was handling this load was a new lady, which is fine. You know, it probably took, by the time I got off the phone, it had been like 5 minutes of me waiting for her to pull up all of her information and somebody telling her in the background, like, now go to highway, now ask what their MC is, now verify the company name. So by the end of it, she says, okay, where's your driver? How far away is your driver? I said, well, he's over in Waterford, Michigan. I mapped it, and it said 28 miles. I said, he's 28 miles away. It's about 40 minutes. And she said, oh, this just got covered. And then the guy that had been like coaching her in the background said, now hang up the phone. I'm like, okay, all right. After me waiting for you for 5 minutes.
So here's Screw the Dispatcher 101.
Yeah, that's how people are trained.
Oh, there's no love in this industry. None whatsoever. I've got to say, it's not been too difficult of a day either for me. I had everyone scheduled today, but then I had 2 loads get canceled on me, but I was able to quickly get new loads booked, so I can't complain too much. I think I only got 1 load I have to worry about for tomorrow, so yay. So I can put a lot of attention on this because we've got a lot of good stuff to talk about. But before we get to our guests and how things are going, we're going to give some love to our new sponsor, AccuBid Pro.
What is your cost per mile? Have you been hitting your profit margins? Do you struggle with bidding in a way that is both profitable and competitive? Would it be worth it to have all of this information right in front of you? By calculating your cost per mile, AccuBid Pro helps you stay profitable in an industry still struggling to recover. In order to calculate your cost per mile, AccuBid Pro asks you questions about your business expenses. Our goal is to help you understand what you need to keep operating in order to keep up with the game and maintain your business. Enter your origin and destination, and we show you what you should bid based on your personal cost per mile in order to be profitable. Bid smarter, bid faster, bid better with AccuBid Pro.
Let's go ahead and get to our guests. The last time we had Miss Claudia Catlett on the show was when we did our Ladies of Logistics episode. Claudia, it is so nice to have you back. How have you been?
Thanks, guys. Well, I'm doing well. Just same, fighting freight pod.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Yeah, it's so hard to get you onto the show, though. It's so difficult to schedule you sometimes. I'm so glad that we were able to finally get you in here to talk about compliance issues. We also have with us
your show's on Mondays, and that's the day that I have with my sugar bears. So
Yeah, I know, and yeah, but unfortunately I can't change the day that I do this.
No,
The
I'm
network
good.
will not allow me. I got to get with the CEO of our network about that. There. Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to be
Also,
here. Thank you for the invitation.
Our regular friend and fellow fraud fighter, Dale Prax of Freight Validate, is also with us. Dale, how have you been, sir?
I've been more than fantastic.
That's damn good to hear.
Any day that you can make it so that some bad guys can't get any more freight is just like, it's like Christmas.
Absolutely, especially since we're only a few weeks away from that. So get your Christmas shopping done now, folks.
Yeah. Stop a scammer, beat the holiday rush.
Yeah, exactly. And boy, they are out there in droves. And it's not just the international ones. The domestic ones are out there beating us up too. So stay on top of it, folks.
I don't know how they're going to have enough money left to buy Christmas presents. They keep buying MCs like they're like everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what I guess they're buying each other for Christmas, I guess, MC numbers.
They don't pay their drivers. They keep all the money, so they have more than enough money to buy 100 MCs and 100 Christmas gifts for children.
It just drives me nuts.
Meanwhile, the guys that they took their money from can't even get home to see their family for Christmas.
Yeah, that's it. It's criminal. This industry sometimes is so unfair to the good guys, and it drives me insane.
And the people that are buying the MC numbers have no clue what they're getting into. I'm selling my company. Well, you're not really selling your company. You're selling an MC number, and that guy's going to go change he's going to file for incorporation in another state using your name, and your name's going to be spread like mud, and people are going to think that you've been ripping them off, and that guy's going to be gone by the time you find out about it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I just got to notice that we weren't running live on LinkedIn. So those of you who are on LinkedIn, thank you for joining us. We apologize about the technical difficulties, but let's go ahead and get back to this. Okay, so again, the premise for today is how to make sure the good guys don't get cut out of these loads. Because as I said before, you have, since July, the scale houses have been informed by DOT that they're not permitted to do voluntary inspections. And I knew when I was a carrier several years ago, I would go ahead and run my truck right through the scale house on Interstate 16 in Georgia, right outside of Georgia Southern University, and I could get an inspection without even trying. Today, it can't be done. Today, they turn carriers away in droves, and they got signs on the doors saying, we do not do voluntary inspections. The problem with that is that it became a popular thing among compliance groups that you need to have a inspection on your record, a roadside inspection, in order to be able to get set up with a broker. At the time when that first started a little over a year ago, it sounded like a really good idea. Now, not so much. So what do we as an industry need to do to try to get around this? So let me go ahead and start with the compliance expert. Claudia, you are in compliance. This is your everyday eat, breathe, and live thing. Is there a solution?
Sure there is. Yeah, so the solution is, so first let's talk about why that first came about, right? The reason that compliance folks first were saying like, hey, you have to have an inspection is because frankly, loads were it was the first easy, if you will, fix to saying, well, if a carrier only has, if they don't have any trucks, or if they have one truck, and or listed as insured, it's a way to help you verify that they actually have trucks on the road. Like, hey, I'm looking, you have trucks on the road, you haven't been inspected, you've been in business for 5 years. If you're running 15 trucks, you've been in business for 5 years, and you're running like across multiple states. You got to be running pretty damn clean to not get any inspection in that amount of time, like running interstate, right? So that was the initial response. So it was well intended. So understand that from the beginning. It wasn't like, oh, brokers are out to fuck over carriers, and this is the first way we're going to do it. So let's like nip that in the bud. So now, like understanding that, like, what are we doing? So what has happened? You're right. So now this rule has come about that it's very difficult for some carriers to get those inspections. Understanding that, yes, sometimes it is the carrier has something going on. There's something negative, and that's what's going to feed them. That's not to say that there aren't good. I mean, we run, like the brokers that I work for, the family that I work for also has an MC, like the motor carrier side. We run 50 to 65 trucks. I understand what roadside inspections are. I know that we get back good inspections. Like I have drivers who regularly get bonuses for having good inspections. So they are out there. It's not like the only inspections out there that are able to get are shitty ones. There are good ones. However, it's not as common. We understand that. So on the compliance side, what can you do? So what I have said is that, and I try to get carriers to understand this, like the initial thing that we're looking at when we say no inspections is a no load. That's like your first line of defense. Okay. So like when you've got a brokerage who's got, they've got 40 LCs or load coordinators or whatever the term is for the person that books the load. They don't have, like, all of those people aren't going to have the in-depth, like, ability to go back and look into carriers. Not everybody is a subscriber to Freight Validate or whatever platform it is that is available out there. There are multiple platforms, so we can get more into those. However, inspections is always something that's going to show up on those, or like not having inspections will show up. So what can we do to negate that? Now, on my side, if you call into my brokerage and you're like, hey, we're not going to load you because you have no inspections, you can ask to elevate that, and it'll escalate to me. It's going to escalate to either me or my ops manager. And then when it comes to that, I will look at that MC. If they have their ELD connected, so we utilize Highway for our initial vetting and onboarding of carriers. There are multiple other platforms out there that allow you to connect via ELD or show your ELD of some sort. If anybody says to me like, hey, I don't have any inspections, but here's the link, here's the ELD link to my unit, or my ELD is connected with MacroPoint, you can track me that way. Here it is. That's all I need. Are you willing to show me your registration to show me that there's a truck that's registered to you? Are you willing to do the things that I need to satisfy my inquiry to say whether or not there are units on that road? Are you willing to have your driver complete the ID verification link that I'm going to text him or send to you via email, and have you send to your driver to verify that driver's license is accurate, that it's a valid license, and then it's going to give me back the selfie of that carrier, of that driver, so that I can send that to my shipper to say, hey, this is the driver that I want you to load. If it's not this driver, don't load them. If you're willing to satisfy those requirements for me, I don't have a problem loading someone who has no inspections. But if you're going to sit there on one side and say like, I'm not willing to send you my ELD link, I'm not willing to send you this, I'm not willing to send you that, but then like cry to me about not getting loaded because you have 0 inspections, that's a no-go for me. So I realize I realize I'm gonna come across a little bit harsh right now, but understand like this is all day. This is all day. Like, hey, can we load this carrier? Hey, can we load this carrier? Hey, can we load this? Can we overlook that? I don't want to overlook anything. I want a DNA sample. Like, I want everything. I know I'm not going to get it, and I recognize it and understand that. But like, we have tools that are available on the in the industry to be able to overcome this 0 inspection thing. You can easily, like I said, on my side, you can easily do that with an ELD connection or an ELD link of some sort. You can like I said, I'm very fortunate. I'm super excited to be partnering with Freight Validate, and that I have the ability to hop on and send in a driver identification and get that verified. There have been times that has absolutely pushed me to one side to say, yes, you can load this carrier. There's other times that I've been like, oh, that's interesting. If you're not willing to do any of this, then we're not going to load you, because I'm giving you every opportunity to show me who you are, and you're not willing to do that, then I don't have any business sending you any freight. So when you think about I think about as a whole, right? When you go buy here, pay here car, right? $5,000, $6,000. And I'm not I'm not dismissing that amount of money. But when you're buying something that's $25,000 or less, you still have to jump through a massive amount of hoops at one small place in order to get that piece of whatever it is, that car, that piece of furniture, whatever it is that you want to get. But for some reason, I'm expected to just blindly say, like, well, here you go. Here's $100,000 plus of my customer's freight that I'm just going to blindly, hope that you're there because you're behind some email address. Fuck that. And I'm not going to do it. Like, that's just all there is to it. So I forgot. Okay. So let me tone that down a little bit. Sentiment's still the same.
Tell us how you really feel.
I should, I feel like everybody knows what you see is what you get with me. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat those things. So I'm here for it. If you are a carrier who is legitimate, who is willing to do the things, I'm here for it. And unfortunately, sometimes that's part of it, right? Like Kate was talking about earlier, like, hey, that load got covered while they were trying to, they were working through someone new, like teaching them how to utilize the system. That's going to happen sometimes. I have guys who will send me a message. We've got multiple people on our team who are trying to cover the same load. One of them comes through that carrier. Have someone says, hey, can you check out this carrier? And while I'm looking up a couple of things on that carrier, another carrier comes through that makes that call that is already set up and everything's already good and green lighted with them. They agree to the rate and they book that load before I get through with the vetting on the other side. So we don't just utilize one thing. There are some companies who do. I'm not going to slam any brokerage. Every brokerage has their own risk tolerance, their own rules, and however they're gonna choose to do that. If it were me and all of myself, like I'm telling you, like it's terrifying to me what would be required for that. But I understand that there are different levels of that. Sometimes the load does get covered by somebody else who's already set up. It's unfortunately, that's part of what happens when you're load boarding and you've got multiple people trying to book loads. It's different when you've got a brokerage who, hey, only one person is working on that load, right? So if you've got only one person working on that load, when you're dealing with I'm thinking more of like an agent type model. And so, there's one person or like one person and their sidekick that are booking loads like, hey, you got that one over there from, North Carolina to Virginia. All right, cool. I'm gonna work on this one over here. And then you don't have that issue. But unfortunately, that's just not the way it is. That certainly isn't the way it is when you're talking about a big brokerage, like a really large brokerage. So, those are the things. To me, the best way to try to do those things is to, be set up with whomever you can. Are already, and trying to establish those relationships. But I also understand, just like you guys, when you're calling people, like you don't have time to waste either, right? For you to sit on the phone for 15 minutes to wait for somebody to pick up and then tell you that load has been covered for 10 minutes, like it's unfortunate. And nobody wants to waste anyone's time. There are certainly some new tech things that are coming out there, maybe going to help with some of those issues. And hopefully they'll make things better instead of worse. I don't know, like it's yet to be determined on some of those things. But for me, ELD link, send me an ELD link. Show me that truck is registered in your name. Show me you have insurance on that truck. Show me the insurance with the VIN on it. There are multiple things that can certainly be done in order to still go ahead and let that carrier haul that freight. I'm all about it. I don't care if you're a one owner guy and, guy or gal. I'm not trying to be sexist on that, but one way or the other, you've got a small company. You're not getting inspected. You've got a clean truck. You keep your truck remarkably clean. You're not getting pulled in scales. It's not fair for you to get penalized for that. But again, there's got to be the willingness on the other side to show me that unit is in play and show me that unit is on the road. And you do that, then we're going to be in business and we can make something happen.
Well, let me backtrack for 1 second here. I know I made that
Sure.
wisecrack earlier today about another dispatcher getting screwed over. You're 100% correct. And I think Kate and I both understand that for large brokerages, it's a team effort and everyone's trying to get a load covered. I have heard in the background someone shouting, "I've got Philadelphia covered." And that's the load I'm calling in on. I'm like, oh, well, I snooze, I lose. Absolutely. It's part of the game. And I think most people in this industry already understand that. So please forgive the wisecrack from earlier.
No, and please understand, like, when I recognize that I come across pretty aggressive sometimes, like, apparently that's just the way I roll.
You should. It's a good thing.
The thing is, like, I will bend over backward for you as a carrier if I truly think that you need help and you're there to if you're like, "Hey, Claudia, like, this happened to me," you call and you're like, "Claudia, like, we wound up running this load for general and it looks like we were double brokered. Like, this is what, or we got a double brokered load to us. This is the email thread that I have. This is who I communicated with." Like, hey, like, absolutely, let's fix it and get you taken care of. I will do the work on my end to make sure that you're taken care of. But again, like, that has to be met with like a willingness on the other side to be able to show those things. And I think that sometimes what happens is, like, we on separate sides of the aisle, and this is super broad, so don't anybody call me or like start messaging my LinkedIn and saying I'm beating up everybody, because that's not the freaking case. But overall, we as a society, I don't care if we're talking like one side of political aisle or the other, one side of gender or the other, or whatever it is, or whatever multiple sides of gender there are now, I don't know. But the point is to say, like, oh, well, people over there this, people over there that. And that's not the case. Like, there are all these in betweens of that, and we don't have to single that out. But as a whole, and carriers have this. I'm not even going to make that broad statement to say carriers as a whole. I'm going to say there are some very loud voices from one side of the other that make everybody else in between, like, just throw up their hands and say, like, that's not even it. So you've got brokers on one side who are like screaming and beating up carriers. You've got carriers on the other side who are screaming and beating up about brokers. And you've got a few carriers, honestly, like, legitimate carriers. Like, not all carriers are bad, right? Like, we're trying to weed out the bad actors. We're trying to weed out the ones who have purchased MCs who aren't disclosing that information. We're trying to weed out the ones who are not truly showing who they are, who are not insuring their trucks, who are double brokering loads, who are. And I had someone correct me the other day saying double brokering isn't illegal, it's unauthorized. Whatever, don't fucking do it. Like, how about that? How about you just don't do that? If you're not authorized to broker a load, don't freaking broker it. Like, I don't give a shit if it's illegal or not. Just don't damn do it. Like, how about that? So
I always understood, for the record, that it is in fact illegal per MAP 21, but that's just me.
Well, I mean, I'm going to let the compliance guy, I'll let FMCSA roll into that one, Mr. Unofficial over there. But, the point is this, like, there's a right and there's a wrong. And sometimes there's some shit where you're just kind of stuck in between, right? And I also recognize that there are people who are on all of these teams who aren't the shot callers, right? Like, understand, like, if you call me and you're like yelling at me about a claim or something, like, I might only have like this, even though I'm the claim manager, there's only like this much power that I have within a certain field, right? Like, I have to do what is required of me of my company. And you've got people like, carriers who are calling in to brokers like, how dare you tell me I can't load you because you have 0 inspections? Like, that's messed up. But the guy on the other end of the phone more than likely is not the one who made that call, because if they were, they would be able to change that rule. but they're not. They're held by something. And so then they can say like, hey, you can email risk management, or you can call such and such, or let me escalate this and transfer it up. Someone else can make that call. But, I mean, come at me. It's probably not going to do you a lot of good, but if you're going to come at me hateful, like, I don't have time for that. But if you're going to come at me and say like, Claudia, I have a problem, or this is a situation, I'd like to be able to haul that load. Hey, no problem. I had a guy, Dale, I don't think you were in that, I don't remember if you were in that talk at Broker Carrier Summit, but there was a carrier that was in a talk that was about, it was about fraud and zero inspections. And we had this conversation, and I had a fellow fraud fighter who works at another brokerage reach out to me and said, hey, Claudia, do you know this guy? He said he was at Broker Carrier Summit. And I looked at him, I'm like, yeah, I do know that guy. He's a small independent owner operator and such and such. And yeah. And so guess what? Like, he doesn't have inspections, but he absolutely got approved to work for that brokerage because of work that he was willing to do and step up and say, hey, this is what I'm willing to show you and do in order to overcome the fact that I don't have any inspections. And if you're willing to do that, then, hey, I'm here for you. Let's do the work. Let's get it done. But also don't call me and be like, hey, I don't know why I'm not getting loads from you, and expect me to show all of the cards to show you exactly what I do for all of my vetting. Because guess what? Like, nobody's going to show you all of that. And I understand as a carrier, that's frustrating, because on our carrier side, I have my fleet managers yelling at me like, hey, so-and-so won't load us. Can you see if we have an alert? Like, what's going on over here? What's happening? And typically I can suss through it and figure out why someone is doing that or not doing that. But not everyone has that someone on the compliance who can look back and sort those things out. John, that you've called me about MCs as well. Like, I'm happy to help. Like, I will look into it and I will work with you on it. But I'm certainly not about to just like say, okay, here's all the cards and here's exactly how you can avoid me catching any of the shadiness. Cause like, that's not going to happen.
Of course not. We need to have our weapons. We need to have our methods. And the more we disclose about how we deal with fraud in the industry, then the more likely these guys are going to change tack. And then we're reacting to them yet again. So absolutely respect that.
That's what's great about Dale's Freight Validate and the ID verification, right? Because like there are platforms that are coming out with ID verification. Highway is coming out with their ID verification. I don't want to say another one that I think might be, because I'm not sure, so I don't want to like throw that out there. But who's the oh my word, the carrier anyway.
Verified carrier
has an aspect of that. But here's the thing, like, about those is that like, I, as the brokerage, like, I get to see that it's done, but like, I don't have, I guess it shows my cards even more that I'm a control freak. Like, I don't have the ability to send that to anybody that I want to in that, right? But with the Freight Validate program and the ID verification, I can create that link and I can send it over and say, I want to know who you are and I want to know who's picking up my load. I can send it to the driver. I can send it to the person who's dispatching. I can send it to the person who says, I'm the owner behind an email address. It's like something at Gmail that's never bothered to sign their name, who has email. The emails are fragments of sentences who aren't even anything. I'm like, okay, Mr. Owner, send this. Here's the link. Let me know that you're the owner, and I'm happy to discuss this in further with you. And if they're not willing to do that, then I'm not willing to discuss it further with you. It's about transparency. There was someone on LinkedIn, Dale, I think you and I were both commenting on it, and she was talking about like basically like working away from home, like IPs pinging for not being in Arkansas or wherever. And if it's the driver not pinging there, then that's something different. But when you're talking about dispatch service or the office or something like that, like, I don't care where you work. I'm a huge advocate for work remote. Like, I'm all about it. If you can sit behind a laptop and do your job when you're looking at a beach, I'm all for it. Let's do that. But don't lie to me about it. Don't tell me you're sitting in Cincinnati when you're not. And to me, like that's where I sit. Like maybe I've got enough shitty ex-husbands that I'm just super like whatever, but like don't tell me something and it not be true. I'm just not into that. I would rather just let's not do that. It's about being truthful about where you are and who you are. And here's the thing. Guess what? Like there are brokers who aren't true, who aren't honest to their shippers. Oh my gosh, really? Yeah, really. There are brokers who are honest to carriers. There are people who are not honest in every fucking aspect of this industry, every single one of them. I'm not into any of that. Obviously, you can see very clearly that who I am, what I am. Unfortunately, for the better or worse, I don't know. Passionate. That's the word that I get called, passionate. Maybe being me completely and wholeheartedly and genuine on the interwebs will prevent me from ever having a corporate job and position with somebody who's going to be able to go back and see all these posts and in videos that I put out there. But, so be it. Like genuine is who I am and it's where I am. And if you're not going to be that way with me, I don't have any business dealing with you. But if you're willing to do that with me, I will bend over backward to help you.
I think what puts all of us in that general class is the fact that at least three of us, Claudia, Dale, myself, we wore a uniform. And that instills a lot in us when it comes to integrity. And yes, there are bad actors who have worn the uniform too. But that right there to me is a unifying thread. And like you, I don't ever see myself being a CEO or any other C-suite type individual because I am about doing the right thing.
But that doesn't mean that you can't be, right? Like I'm just saying that like my choice of presentation isn't always the most packaged for a Fortune 100, 500 type company. Maybe depending on the company, maybe that's a vibe. I don't know. But I don't think that just because a company is large means that you lose integrity. And I think that just because a company is small doesn't mean that they have integrity either.
Claudia, you are a fraud fighting femme fatale. Do not change a damn thing that you do. We love you the way you are. Dale, you haven't said more than 2 words.
I'm gonna be quiet.
I've just been thinking and listening. So
much more presentable than I am. This is why
Claudia is a lot like me, former Marines. And one thing about Marines, whether it was in combat on the military side or combat against scumbags, there are two things that are true. If you're a good guy, you have no better friend. If you're a bad guy, you have no worse enemy. So that's kind of how I roll. And that's how I think. And I think Claudia thinks the same way. And that's probably why we're so passionate. So I'm going to go back a couple things that we talked about that Claudia mentioned. One is the facial recognition verification. I was first to start it in the transportation industry in April 2023. I introduced it, said we should do it. It must have been a good idea because FMCSA copied it starting in 2025. A couple other companies have obviously started it. They're doing it. Now, the other thing I did about 2 months ago is took it a step further. They're all using it to just identify the owner of the company or who they think is the owner of the company. And that can be scammed, obviously. What I want to do is give it to, like Claudia said, give it to the end user and find out who the person you're giving the freight to is. Because that owner of the company could have been verified through another platform, but the guy you're giving the freight to may not even work for him. That guy you're giving the freight to may have used to work for him. That guy, you can't just say, okay, the company's approved. People run companies. Companies don't scam anybody. People that work in this industry scam people. That's what I believe, and that's why we started that. So I want to go back. We talked about how do we stop the carriers from getting ripped off or not getting loads and all those kind of things. What happened, and Claudia's right, there were good intentions when we started asking for inspections. The problem is that, and there's a book that I read several times when I was an active duty Marine. It was called The Art of War by Sun Tzu. One of the most important things out of that book said, you need to know the enemy as good as you know yourself to lessen the number of battles. Everything that we've done in fighting fraud up to this point, maybe in the last year or so, we have never considered the outcome of our action. We've never considered what the enemy may do with it. So an example of that is requiring inspections. I think that is probably the most ridiculous requirement to qualify or disqualify anybody, because it's subjective. It can make a bad guy look good guy look bad. Just because you don't have an inspection doesn't mean you're a bad guy. So you think about, what did we do for that, and what did the enemy learn from it? You have to have an inspection. Oh, great. I'm going to go get a roadside inspection, a voluntary inspection. The problem, the inspections were made for safety, not for compliance with the broker. So we've blurred the lines between safety and compliance. And we've said, we don't care about safety as much, just as long as you have an inspection so I can see if I should give you a load so I can trust you. So the one word that always is missed out of roadside inspections is random roadside inspections. That's what they're called. It's for a reason. It's to see if that guy's running a good truck. So when we started doing this bullshit, I call it, of saying an inspection determines whether you're good or bad, the bad guys would go renting a truck at Penske that's a brand new truck, take it and get a bunch of inspections, and then they're good to go. Then they go turn the truck back into Penske and run their crap on the road and kill people. So that blurred lines, and we didn't think about what the enemy is going to do about it. And so I totally agree that the DOT should not allow a voluntary inspection, because they're there for safety reasons. So random roadside inspections. Now, how do we get to that point? Otherwise, the FMCSA is required to do a new entrant audit in 12 to 18 months of a guy getting his authority. That should stand as one of his inspections, right? They've gone and looked at this guy and determined who he is. He looked at his truck, did his drug, did everything. If we would just do that part, we would have taken away that problem. So there are two things that I really don't like about I think treating carriers bad. One is the number of inspections. The guy has two trucks, only had one inspection, so he's only done 50% of his inspections. Well, Landstar has thousands of trucks. Have they all had inspections last year? I don't think so. I think less than 40% has, although they may have been known for double brokering here and there, but that's another story. So the other one I don't like is how long the guy's been in business. If a guy loses his job because he worked at Yellow, been there for 30 years, and a 3 million mile guy, and he says, I'm not going to work for the man anymore, I'm going to go buy a truck, and we don't give him a load for 9 months because he's only been in business for 30 days or 90 days, that's the dumbest thing in the world. So, but the bad guy, he says, okay, that's all right, I can live through it. I have plenty of money coming in from overseas. I'll go take cheap loads from TQL or whoever, and I'll get through the 6 months and I'll start booking freight. All we've done is given him training for 6 months on how to rip people off. Do you think that guy's going to turn good after 91 days? I don't think so. He's still a scumbag. So that's all bad. So that's why I started my program, Freight Validate, saying if we just concentrate on the baseline, is this guy who he says he is with 100% certainty? Is he in violation or in compliance with the state and federal laws that he's required to be in compliance with? Should he have been given his authority in the first place? Should he still have his authority? Those are the things that we look for. After that, after we've identified him, done facial recognition verification, we've done all those kind of things, now we can determine, okay, we got two guys looking for this job, two carriers looking for the job. They both passed everything. Now we can start looking at other flags that says, hey, of the two, I'm going to pick the best guy. That's how we employees. That's how we do, a lot of things. So why don't we do that? Let's make sure, like, if you're going to date somebody, let's make sure they're not a criminal, make sure they shouldn't be in prison. And then after that, okay, who's a prettier one, right? Whatever your determination is. But I think that you have to set a baseline first, determining who they are, making sure that they're not lying to you, all those kind of things. Then we can look at, okay, he's only had 2 inspections. Well, this guy's had inspection every week. Even though that first guy may have had pre-pass or whatever, use those determining factors after you determine whether the guy should be in your platform in the first place. And that's kind of how we've decided to do our thing. The last thing in the world we need to be doing is taking loads, taking food off the table of guys just because of the number of inspections. Overdrive Magazine did an article about 3 months ago, I think in July, about these thousands of expedited motor carriers that run vehicles 10,000 pounds or less. And they all had bad ratings on all these different platforms because they had no inspections done. They're not a commercial motor vehicle. They're not required to do inspections, but they all lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in contracts because somebody said they have no inspections. What are we doing to ourselves? That's just ridiculously stupid. The other aspect is there's these poor owner-operators and small carriers. Who's vetting the people that are giving them freight to make sure they're not crooks? Claudia's right. Guess what? There's bad brokers out there. But who's protecting the owner-operators from them? Nobody. Do you know why? Because they don't have the money that brokers have, because they don't have to buy tires. The broker doesn't have to buy tires. The broker doesn't have to pay for showers or parking, all those kind of things. They can afford to have a computer sitting in front of them to check people out. This poor owner operator's got, I guess I got to take the load. It's the only one on the DAT board. DAT board didn't check them. There's nobody checking it. And to my point is, if I were an owner operator, I'm really a bank. I'm lending you money. I'm going to give you something and hope you pay me in 30 days. Could I go into a bank and say, I know you don't know much about me, Mr. Broker, but bank, but I need you to lend me a bunch of money. And I promise I'm going to pay you back. Here's my MC number. Go look on my door. No one's going to give you money, but brokers do it every day. Brokers rip them off every day. They don't, the banker doesn't get paid back. So we're the only platform that I know of, and maybe y'all know of some others, that vet brokers and we vet brokers and freight forwarders for the owner operators and the small carriers. We can tell them that the guy's good or bad. We run credit scores on them. We give them a chance to look at this guy before they take a load from them. Now let's put them in the same level playing field as the brokers have. Now I can determine which broker I want to work for too. This thing has to go both ways. And if we don't do it that way, we're just kidding ourselves. And it even just, I'll throw one more thing into it. It goes to the big talking point right now is 371.3 about broker transparency. Why does a broker need to know exactly how much a carrier need to know exactly how much a broker's making or whatever? You need to know your costs and what your cost is and determine the price. Doesn't make any sense. If I have a load going from Miami to Chicago and I'm paying you $5 a mile on a 90-cent lane, and then you deliver it and you're going, wow, I made $5,000 in this run coming up here, but I just found out the broker made $10,000. I'm going after him. Well, come on. It doesn't really matter. And there aren't brokers out there making 80%. The average is 14%, and that's kind of where it's at. So we should not think that somebody else is going to determine our success or failure based on how much they're charging their customer. The whole reason that 371.3 came in the first place is called constructive trust. That just means that if I'm an intermediary or a broker and I'm going to get paid from a shipper, I have to have a constructive trust to make sure that I'm going to pay that carrier. It works when you go to bankruptcy court and all those kind of things. Not how much they're paying, how much profit. It's just to make sure that everybody stays honest. That was why the law was put into place in the first place. So that's my soapbox deal on that. I think that we need to not rip off brokers, but I don't think brokers don't need to rip off carriers, but carriers don't need to rip off brokers either and charge them $13,000 to go from California to Minnesota when it was COVID time. So if we don't start taking care of each other, and that's kind of where it starts, like in the vetting process, take care of each other, in money, take care of each other, in friendship, take care of each other. If we don't do that, then we're just kidding ourselves. So there's my whole soapbox in about, 11 minutes.
Well, it actually was 13 minutes, but you're absolutely dead on. I like it.
But ahead, Dale, that's just it, right? Like when, Dale referred back to, our Marine Corps time frame when we were like, there's no greater friend, there's no worse enemy. And listen, like if I feel like if I'm confident that I've got a carrier that has, been shady. And when I say when I say this, I say with receipts. I don't mean like, I just think that you're shady. If you're giving me the heebie-jeebies, I'm not posting on Carrier 411 because somebody gave me the heebie-jeebies or whatever platform, right? I'm not posting any of that out there. But if I've got receipts in hand that say that that you did something that you were not supposed to do, like I'll burn you down. And if you want to double down on it, yeah, keep at me, because it will get worse. Like I'm not interested in any of that. And I'm not going to play games with that. I'm not going to have anybody toying with my team members. I'm not going to have anybody calling, spamming. Like that is not going to happen. But we've got to, but that also means that we do have to take care of each other. And here's the thing, side note, guess what? There are people who work in companies who are like, hey, person who works across the desk from me, you probably shouldn't have done that. That was kind of shady for you to do. And, whether it's ripping off a carrier, there are things that happen within different parts of companies that aren't necessarily loved by everyone who's there. Not everybody is on board. Like, just like within the military, we have our own 10%, it's the, what is the 80 10 10, right? Like, that applies on literally every aspect. Well, it doesn't matter if you're a small company where you got 10 people in it, or, a massive company that you've got 1,000. You're going to have the people who are just like those ones who, in any way, shape, or form possible, they're just going to be a smidge shady about it, or straight up shady about it. And you've got the other ones who are like all the way on the other side. So it does, you've got it all the way around, and we do have to look out for each other. We have to make sure that we're taking care of those who are servicing us. And here's the thing, like, we can talk all day long about carriers and brokers and everything else, but like, when it all comes down to it, it's our drivers. It's our drivers who are out there who are, there are these loud voices for carriers, and I'm here for it. Like, absolutely, let me hear the voice. But you've got carriers who are being super loud about, like, oh, brokerages are effing us over and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, not even looking at what they're doing to their own drivers. When you're on a carrier, when you're operating an MC, and you want to tell that broker, hey, you need to be fair to me, absolutely, you should. And also, PS, by the way, motor carrier, be fair to your drivers. So, when you've got drivers being brought in from, here, language is something that is language barrier is faced among the industry and drivers, whether you're talking about a shipping at the shipper receiver, or when someone's getting pulled over, there's an incident, there's an accident, or whatever. Like, there's oftentimes a language barrier. Do you think that someone who is in this country who's driving a 80,000-pound unit, who has a really hard time speaking to you, who's like 40 years old, do you think that they've been here in this country for 40 years? Maybe, possibly they're a new immigrant who is coming here to try to make their best life and try to be better. And then you've got someone who's like being a predator to them and saying, like, oh, here, you can drive and you can live in this place, and here's 40 cents a mile or 30 cents, whatever it is, not even paying them or whatever. And then we wonder why loads get misdelivered. We wonder why paperwork isn't followed, because they can't freaking read it. And I'm not saying this to say like everyone needs to, I'm not advocating for like this whole language or whatever. I'm just saying, like, there are so many things that need to be taken into account, and with fairness. And we need to be fair to our drivers, to offer them the opportunities. We need to give them a fair shake. And if we're not giving our drivers a fair shake, if motor carriers aren't giving our drivers a fair shake, brokerages aren't giving our motor carriers a fair shake, motor carriers aren't giving brokers a fair shake, like, all of that has to happen. And frankly, like, it's pie in the sky to think that everyone's going to give a fair shake, because that's just not the way it is. Like, our world has been like, we are tied in war because of greed and power. Like, the greed and power hunger, both of those things are what absolutely drives all of the shit that's happening right now. Every single bit of it is all being driven by those two things. And so, but that's not going away. That's human nature. And I'm just saying that there are options out there to try to regulate, to try to mitigate the risk of your company, try to mitigate the risk that your customers are being put into. And that's what we're here to try to do. And so I want to protect my company. I'm not protecting a Fortune 500 company. I'm not protecting stakeholders. I'm protecting the couple that started our company. When we have a claim go bad, if something goes wrong and we wind up in a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, that's not just some shareholder who's got or some big corporation who's got massive attorneys behind them who are going to keep things in court for another 20 years. That's Margaret Decker. That's who that is. Like, who gets hosed on that. So, like, I take it very personally. And that's why I'm so remarkably passionate about this, is because when I'm trying to protect our company, I'm protecting the woman who sits in the front office. And I don't mean like in some ivory tower. I mean, like, I walk past her every single day. And I have absolutely been crushed when I had to walk up to her and say, like, this claim isn't covered because the truck that hauled that unit, hauled that load, wasn't insured by wasn't listed on the COI. And, I take that very personally. And so when you hear me talking about like, these are the things that I want to do, protect our company, I'm protecting the people behind it. I'm protecting the 40 or so people that work across the different parts of our company. Because if we don't keep our doors open, all of those people are looking for other jobs. And at least the ones who are quote unquote just workers have another job. At least the guys who are sales team members have their customers that they can take to another brokerage. The company the couple who owns that company, they're not doing that. Like, they're ready to retire. So like, there's just I take it all remarkably seriously because of that. And so when I'm yelling and raising all kinds of whatever and flag and such things about like, don't load that carrier, or carriers need to do this, it's all for protection. And we're trying, guess what, motor carriers? I'm trying to protect you too. Because if someone loads your MC without doing their due diligence, if someone on my team doesn't do their due diligence and we load your MC with freight, and it's not actually you that's being loaded, and you get run down, you get your company completely ruined because you've got all these double brokering reports and theft and fraud and all of that out there. And now you're never going to be able to touch a load again, because someone else has done a misdeed with your information. Like, when we ask you to verify these things, we're not trying to be a pain in the ass. We're trying to help protect you as well. So, I figure the way I look at it, the madder you get about it, the less reason I have to. The people who get ridiculously irate are the ones that I don't want to be loading anyway.
Hey, I just want to kind of add to that too. And I think one of the things that Claudia mentioned that's really stuck with me since I was in the Marine Corps, actually, like 10% of all people are bad people, no matter what. I don't care if you're a nurse. I don't care if you're a doctor. I don't care if you're a cop. I don't care who you are. 10% are bad people. That means 10% of drivers are bad. So one thing I don't, I won't say anything bad about any of the other platforms, but I will say some things that may be different if I owned one of those platforms. For instance, Carrier 411. If you have something, and again, I go back to objective and subjective data. If somebody is late or somebody does something stupid in a truck and someone puts a freight guard on them, they're not putting it on the driver, they're putting it on the carrier. If the carrier didn't know about it or has a bad driver, why should they be shut down and never take a load again? They should fire the driver. So what I'm doing in my platform now is that, with our carrier identity and, our driver identity dispatch, if something goes wrong on my brokerage, I'm putting the guy's name in there who we verified who he is. And here's John Smith, who did it bad for us. So if you're going to take a load from XYZ company and John Smith is your dispatcher, you may want to second guess the company and say, look, John, I'm not dealing with John Smith. I like your company, but I ain't dealing with him. Right. So I think we have to kind of think that way. A freight guard or a shutting a carrier down disqualification, double brokering. The owner knew about it. Bad insurance certificate. The owner knew about it. This isn't just some driver that went rogue and did something stupid. Right. If it's not showing you're affiliated with other FMCSA regulated entities, that's not a driver that went rogue. The owner knows about it. Let's start separating out the things that the owner knew about and freight guard the shit out. If it's something stupid, the guy didn't show up for 5 minutes later, or, maybe the driver went rogue and took 2 loads so he can make more money. Many times the owner didn't know about that. So before you put the freight guard, talk to the owner and say, do you know your driver did this? What are you going to do about it?
And validate the owner to make sure you're talking to the owner.
Exactly. Use freight validate to validate. I mean, know who you're dealing with 100% certainty. But I think we got to get away from penalizing carriers for something a rogue driver did. Let's note that in our system, we put a note in there that says, hey, rogue driver did something stupid. If you're going to deal with this company and you get Bubba Smith as your driver, you may want to second guess it and say, hey, I won't. He's got a record. He's done this stuff twice before to somebody else. Maybe we need to hold people responsible rather than companies responsible, unless they're totally responsible for something in violation of a law. That's what I would if I owned one of those platforms, I would probably say, we're going to open this up to drivers with CDLs. We know who they are. So if the driver did something bad, you don't need to report that as a freight guard, but you do need to contact the owner of the company and then determine what your relationship is with that company. If he says blow it off, we don't have a relationship anymore.
And so that's something that like I have that not all brokers have the visibility on, right? So I see some things on our safety side, on the motor carrier side of it as well. So when you look at when you go to hire a carrier, hire a driver as a motor carrier, you're going to pull their poop six. That name just completely. Anyway, their driving record. Why can't I think of what that's called right now? Anyway, MVR, my word. Anyway, so that you're going to pull the record, and the what's the other thing that's not an MVR? It's the DAC. Driver. No, not data queue. Driver something. It's like when a driver like abandons a unit, or like it's almost like, for lack of a more clear way to say it, it's like freight guarding, sort of like for the driver. Like the driver did these things that were in violation of our company rules, but they weren't like what would go on an MVR, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So that's something that as a motor carrier, if you go to hire a driver, you see those things. But when we go to hire a motor carrier, you don't see all of those things about the drivers that they're hiring, right? So you may have maybe that motor carrier hired a recruiter who maybe wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, and they brought people on that, once they got on and that recruiter's been working you for a few months, you're like, oh, maybe that didn't work out, because some of these drivers are not the most stellar. And then you've got to clean all of that up. But by then you've got, bad inspections, and you've got all this other stuff that's happening. And those are those drivers that were hired, but all of that comes back on your carrier, on your motor carrier authority. So yes, you have to vet that stuff. But, when you're looking at a brokerage, like we don't have the visibility to see that. So unless you're someone who, like Will's brokerage, is actually doing the ID verification of literally every single driver that's coming through, you're not going to necessarily know that load, the driver that did that thing. Like whenever you see these posts about, driver was late, or driver this, or yada, 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 you don't necessarily know which driver it was who was involved in that. Maybe internally in your TMS, you have that. There are things that you can do to help trace that. But, from the outside, there's not that track. There's not the visibility of that from a brokerage standpoint. And honestly, at this point, I'm not saying that wouldn't be a terrible thing in the future, but like at this point, like we got to wrangle the information that we have right now before we start loading a bunch more, I think, in there. But I'm all for being able to do that and saying like, hey, if that action was done by a driver, then that's where you put that. Like I didn't freight guard the carrier who had a driver who had when they were at the shipper, the driver drove where they weren't necessarily supposed to, like they weren't supposed to go that way. And they damaged a little bit of product, and that driver paid for that product, and that was fine. They went ahead and made the delivery. Everything was good. But then when that driver was cleaning off their flatbed, they were tossing all of the stuff because they were aggravated, like, maybe passionate a little bit, and in a hurry, like tossing stuff off of their flatbed. Well, it caused damage to one of the employees of the receiver of their personal vehicle. That was something that was taken care of outside of something. It was that particular driver. It was not that carrier. It wasn't the owner of the carrier who did that. I didn't put a freight guard on for them. They paid for the damage of what they did to the cargo. We handled it with the carrier. We took care of our shipper or of our receiver, made sure everything was good with them, made sure that we followed anything that they wanted to do and move forward with. And then we closed that out. Like, that's not something I'm going to hit that carrier on and say, some of the freight guards that I see are so remarkably petty. And when I say freight guard, I'm using that as a whole. I'm not saying like one particular platform. There are multiple places that you see reviews and posts of carriers that I read it, and I'm like, what's your point? I have better things to do than read this shit. Back up off me. Like, let me see the real stuff. Let me see the information that actually pertains to what I need to pertain to. There was a time when, I think this is honestly before my time in this industry, when you were vetting a carrier, you were looking at your safety score and their and you're like, hey, I want to make sure that carrier has the right safety score and all information. Yeah, like right now, that is an absolute side note. That's crappy for me to say, and maybe I shouldn't say that on the interwebs, but yeah, I mean, it be what it be. Right now, we're trying to make sure that the carrier that is out there is the carrier the carrier that they say they are. That's the main jump that we're going through right now. And then it's like, then you decide more. Like, are you the person you said? Are you the carrier you say they are? Okay, I got 2 carriers who say that who are the carriers that they say they are. Both of them want this load. Now let's pick the best one. Then you can go from there. But it's a lot to intake, and I think that people who feel like that vetting is super simple they haven't done it. Because once you get in the mix, once you get in the shit show, like you realize like there is so much that can be taken. Dale has a point in saying like, I want the information that is I don't want the subjective information. I want to see the SOS. I want to see, what information is out there that's reported, that's hard, that isn't like someone's opinion. And then, but anything I do, there is room for reporting the things that are that you've got receipts for. If you've got receipts for someone double brokering, if you've got receipts for someone not backing up a claim, if you've got receipts like, hey, I've been trying to reach this carrier for 6 months about a cargo claim and they're not standing up for it. Or yes, we filed with their insurance company, but it is taking everything that like we have been asking for this information from them and haven't been able to get it. Guess what? There are shippers in the same way. Like there are shippers that a carrier is like, hey, I'm on our carrier side. I've got a company that filed a cargo claim on us. I'm like 7 months in waiting for the invoice for what the actual damage is. While my carrier side keeps getting their payables frozen, and we have to go back in and talk to the claims and to go back and get that fixed so we can continue to haul loads for them. Meanwhile, still just waiting. There are brokers who are the same way. As a broker, I can't force my customer to send me the information that I need for that. I can keep asking them, and at some point I can say, I'm going to close this claim without that further information. That like we all face battles in trying to get that information. So Dale has a valid point in saying like, hey, there are brokers who don't necessarily send this information very quickly. Sometimes those brokers are trying to get information from their customers. Sometimes those brokers are just not doing it. So, which one is that? And can you provide the receipts? Can you provide the proof? If you can provide that, then by all means, let's mark those things. Let's get them handled. Let's get them out of the way so that those who really want to do the business and need to get the business done can get it done. And so anyway, I'll stop there.
Quite all right. Okay, so we are coming up towards the top of the hour. Okay, and normally I like to try to start tuning things off, but this is a very important discussion. We've touched on a couple very important topics, including broker transparency. And just for the audience's sake, we are planning a show on broker transparency for next week. So feel free to tune in for that, and we can discuss that all the live long day. But one of the things that I do want to point out, and this is both for carriers and for brokers, the tools that exist out there, certainly at its inception, was there for a good reason, had great intentions involved. And as long as Dale pointed out, as long as there's trust within this industry, then things should flow so much more smoothly. There's a way for us to work together. And that's something that carriers and brokers throughout this entire fraud cloud that's been existing for the last 3 years have lost our way. And even if it starts with just us, there needs to be a way for us to finally come together, because we all know as fraud fighters that the scammers operate within that fog of war where there's distrust, where there's disharmony between carriers and brokers. That's where these scammers love to operate, because they laugh their asses all the way back to the bank while we're still pointing fingers at each other. As long as we are able to find a way to work together, then we can finally squeeze these scumbags out of this industry. They're always going to be there.
The problem
there's a way to fight it.
We do have to trust each other, but we have an agency so we don't know who to trust.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an agency that allows people to come into this industry, just like coming across our border, if you come into our industry legally, that's great. If you come across our border, that's great legally. If you do it illegally, things are bad. So, and I've said this many times. I've sent a letter up to the agencies, sent up to OIG. I wrote another article about it. We could stop fraud within 12 months if we do three things. Number one is require every owner or verified owner of a trucking company or brokerage to have a TWIC card, background investigation, biometrics in person, just like 600,000 drivers need to do every year. That's number one. Number two is MAP 21, Public Law 112-141 said 12 years ago that to get into this industry, you have to show that you're experienced, that you've been trained, and you're educated in what you do. So when they're in there getting their in-person TWIC card, when they apply, we send them a book. Here's how you learn everything about it. You're going to take a test. It's all done that day. Okay, now we verified who they are. They applied for authority. They passed their test. They've done all those kind of things. Now, if you're a broker or freight forwarder, you can go. If you're a motor carrier, you have one more thing to do. You have to do your early entry safety audit. We're not waiting 12 months for you to put how many times you put a truck on the road. We're going to check your safety now. We're not going to wait 12 to 14 months. So now everybody's got a safety rating also. 97% of motor carriers do not even have a safety rating. Mm-hmm. Only 3% have conditional or satisfactory. So if we do all those three things, fraud stops. The guy can't say he's in Pittsburgh anymore when he's really in Pakistan. He has to come in person and do his biometrics. Now, all the people are already on the system. You have 90 days to come in and get your TWIC card. If you don't, you're going to get an out of service order. It's really that simple. We could have it done in 12 months.
I love that. I think it's an elegant solution. Frankly, I'd like to see dispatchers included in that solution.
Well, I think we have to take baby steps. I think that if I were the Secretary of Transportation or the head of FMCSA, or I can make that decision, anybody that works in our industry, whether you load a truck, move a box, dispatch a load, you have to have a TWIC card. It is a transportation workers identification credential. There's national security involved in it. If you work in our industry, just like if you're an actor, you have to be a member of the Screen Actors Guild. Should be the same exact thing for the freight industry. You want to come in, you come in right.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And unfortunately, for the record, my TWIC card expired a month ago. I need to go back and get that renewed.
I just renewed mine. I have one as a broker. So when my carriers say, well, I don't have a TWIC card, it's too hard to get, I'm a broker. I don't even need one to have.
I'm just cycling through some of the comments in here. Thank you, folks, for your comments. Really do appreciate it. But now, since we're at the top of the hour, I do want to go ahead and give our guests a final say, chance to make plugs and whatnot. Dale, you first.
Okay.
Any final thoughts?
My final thought is, if we go to the TWIC card program, there's no cost to the taxpayers. We just raise it from $300 to get your authority, which has been that way for years, to $450. That covers the cost of your TWIC card, the investigation, the biometrics, all those kind of things. And the government only pays $60 for it. So they're actually making money. And no cost. And it lasts for 5 years. So it's only $25 a year. So the whole idea behind it is, at the end of 5 years, not only do you have to renew your TWIC card, you have to renew your authority too. So that's my deal. And how to get a hold of me is, if I tell people all the time, if you don't see me on LinkedIn every 15 minutes or so, call 911, something happened, I died. So that's how to get me. Dale Prax on LinkedIn. Dale Prax on LinkedIn, or Dale at freightvalidate.com. Our website is www.freightvalidate.com. Subscribe today. And if you're a veteran or veteran-owned organization, you get 50% off monthly or annual fees.
You know, I got to agree with you there. I think every single time I ever log into LinkedIn, yours is the first post that's sitting at the top of my feed every single time. Claudia, you got any parting thoughts for us?
So, you can find me on the LinkedIn, and I'll check you out. So feel free to send me a message on there. I'm, like I said before, I'm happy to help carriers try to sort stuff out. But again, don't come at me with some crap, because that's not going to fly for me. I'll send you a Freight Validate link, and if you validate to me who you are, then we can work on some things and I can try to get you helped out as far as secure ID verification and make sure you're who you say you are. I understand that it's difficult. It's difficult. Like, please understand that it's difficult for brokers to try to make sure that the person that they're emailing or is calling in and that kind of thing is the person who they say they are. And understanding that, I also know what hoops that carriers are having to jump through on the other side for brokers. I work for companies that are on both sides. I get it, and it's tough. I get it. It's tough. It's really, really tough. And there is no easy solution. And, I personally am not like one vetting company is the end all be all. One solution is the end all be all. Like, I look at multiple things whenever I'm like deep diving into a carrier. You can ask Dale because I'll be sending him a lot of screenshots from like multiple different places of where I'm pulling information to try to get people taken care of. And someone had posted something about like on the comments, like one MC. I don't believe that there's any reason for you to have multiple MCs as a carrier. If you've got, now I understand segregating that, like if you're like, hey, this side runs like only drayage or this side only, there's some differentiating things in that, but I see no reason for a carrier to have multiple MCs when you're running 4 to 5 trucks on every one. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why are we doing that? Like, in what way is that benefiting you? I don't see it. Maybe someone can help me understand that.
The person said about having a social security number, I think, attached to it. I think you have your TWIC card number attached to it, and that belongs to, they coincide with each other. They expire at the same time. And there are, companies like Landstar have 6 MC numbers. I get that. But like Claudia said, you shouldn't have 4 trucks and 5 MC numbers all belonging to the same guy, plus a couple of brokerages thrown in there. This way, and Claudia will tell you, with our freight validate system, with the facial recognition verification, I don't care if you have 50 MC numbers, you only got one face, and I'll match them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Love it. Kate, you got any parting thoughts for us?
Nowhere to start, really. I mean, I get really tired of seeing all the same stupid people out there buying MCs and bringing people on and stealing their money, and really just ready for that to be like nipped and done and over with, because it's so old. But how do you stop those people from, like, all they do is go and get their friend and then have their friend, go file it with the secretary of wherever they feel like putting the fucking company? And
we caught 43 of them today. Claudia sent me over 2 that she thought were maybe kind of in cahoots. We've been investigating them for, I think, about 8 days. But I don't ever try and do anything unless I can verify that they're affiliated. Oh, my mom owns that company. Well, I looked up your mom, and she's been dead since 1982.
Mm-hmm.
So we do look at, Secretary of State. They all try and change. And, the other thing is that they try and change their name. Like, they might spell it differently on FMCSA, but it's still spelled the same on Secretary of State's office. So those algorithms from other companies don't pull that, because they pull in, just data. If somebody spells their name wrong on FMCSA, it's not going to pop up. You have to do manual investigations, and that's kind of what we do every day. We really pull out records and pieces of paper and all kinds of stuff. So 43 today were. They still have active MC authority, but that doesn't mean nothing to us, because if you are subscribed to us, they're going to see a big red X. Don't use them.
Love it. I love it. Okay, before we wrap the show, we do need to go through and do a little bit more sponsor love for AccuBid Pro. Bid better and bid smarter, and bid with AccuBid Pro.
What is your cost per mile? Have you been hitting your profit margins? Do you struggle with bidding in a way that is both profitable and competitive? Would it be worth it to have all of this information right in front of you? By calculating your cost per mile, AccuBid Pro helps you stay profitable in an industry still struggling to recover. In order to calculate your cost per mile, AccuBid Pro asks you questions about your business expenses. Our goal is to help you understand what you need to keep operating in order to keep up with the game and maintain your business. Enter your origin and destination, and we show you what you should bid based on your personal cost per mile in order to be profitable. Bid smarter, bid faster, bid better with AccuBid Pro.
Hey, John, could I put a plug in quick for AccuBid?
Fire away.
Another reason that platform is very important to our industry is because it says what the market rate should be or what it costs are. So it really stops fraud too, because if some broker's offering you a tremendous amount of money for something going to lane that you know is like out of whack, it gives you a chance to think about it again, saying, hey, this is probably too good to be true, because I know from AccuBid what my rate or what the pricing should be somewhere around. So if it's around $1.25 a mile or $1.85 a mile and somebody's offering you $5 a mile, you may want to go back and say, hey, this something's not right here, and really kind of screen them out a little bit better.
Much appreciated there. I want to thank our guests, Dale Prax. If you ever need to get a hold of him, there's his information on the screen. Claudia Catlett as well. It is always great to have you guys with us on the show. And for everyone else out there, please remember that Stop the Scam is live every Monday, 5 p.m. Central on all the Lounge Media Group and Stop the Scam social media outlets. If you ever have an issue, you can always get Kate at kprice@rockdovefs.com, or you can get me, the Double Broker Bounty Hunter, at jcantera@vigilanttransport.com. I know we're coming into the holidays. It's always a dangerous time out there, so stay safe, stay vigilant, and whatever you do, don't let scammers take you for a ride. We'll see you all next week.